it's just um it's just nice to be real. Okay,
Yeah.
here we go. We are back with Alumni Connections, and I've been joking saying I found another AmeriCorps alumni, but it's really not hard to find people that want to come in and talk about service year. So I'm so excited. Welcome to the AmeriCorps Connections, where we catch up with AmeriCorps alumni to reflect on their service year and learn what they're up to now, which is what I'm so excited about. I'm Nikki Fiacco, and I'm a proud AmeriCorps alum from Volunteer, Maryland. Now, while my service year was important and impactful, and I certainly made a difference in my community, one of the skills and the biggest takeaways was the connections and the networking and just believing in myself and my ability. And that's really, I wanted to continue that after my service year. So that's why I developed AmeriCorps Connections. And each week I get to wrangle in another AmeriCorps alumni and have conversations with them and learn about their service year. And then most exciting to me is what they're up to now. So today I'm really excited to be connecting with Chrissy Heyne, a Teach for America alumni, and also a past TFA program staff. She and I connected when I was participating in the Failure Lab training, which we'll go into later on and through our conversation. And she was a facilitator, and I just was like, this is a beautiful soul. And I found out she was an AmeriCorps alum, and I was like, sweet, I could bring her on my podcast. But I was instantly drawn to Chrissy's energy and the attention, and we were vibing right away. So as we'll learn, Chrissy is also a facilitator, a coach, a keynote, and what else? Oh, a mama of two and an overall rock star. So I am personally so happy to know she exists on this planet. And I know this world is better because she's here. So Chrissy, I want you to take it away. And just so you all know, we've already been talking for like a half hour. I finally just was like, we have to start recording.
It's my fault. It's my fault.
So we'll do the best to stay focused.
Yes.
Okay.
Best
Chrissy.
wishes with that. You are in a long line of people who have tried to keep me focused for the last 20 years. First of all, I think it's awesome that you're doing this and really, really excited to be here. Would it be best to start with kind of my core experience or?
Yeah. Where did you start? Like,
Yeah.
why did you serve? Where did you serve? And when did you serve? And then we'll follow the pebbles.
Okay, perfect. I was an O2 Phoenix Corps member. So I taught third grade in Phoenix, Arizona. And when I was in college, actually, I was like debating between Teach for America and Peace Corps and just kind of vacillating between those two pretty regularly. I really was torn about which I wanted to do. I was an education major, so I knew I wanted to be a teacher, but I was really drawn to like this idea at that time to like go and be with a group of like-minded people who were going to make me better. It was like, oh, I can do this thing that I already want to do with a bunch of support that's going to make me even better in the classroom. And so dropped my envelope in the actual US mail and got in. And honestly, like I was surprised, and we talked about this a little bit in the pre-call.
Mm-hmm.
Like my whole journey at TFA, I sort of always felt like I snuck in. And then once I got in, I was like, oh my God, they're letting me stay and they're giving me more opportunities, which was really other amazing people within the core experience kind of supporting me and helping me see myself and helping me see my strengths and developing me and giving me more opportunities. And so, yeah, it changed the course of my life. And
I'm such a big fan of synchronicities. And it's like the teacher will show itself when the student is ready, right? Like, so you were second guessing yourself. You kind of knew what you wanted to do. You felt like an imposter. And then the universe met you where you were and put you in a group of people that empowered you.
Yeah.
And changed your life.
Yeah. And it was mostly like, it was like I was constantly always getting stretched to do something before I was ready to do it, including and starting with teaching. Like I'll never forget my first day of teaching, full day. And I was like an ed major. So in my head, I was like, I sort of know what I'm doing. I had just student taught for a semester. And like, I was out of activities by like 10 a.m. Like I read aloud for the rest of the day. Like I lost my voice because I was like, oh, like this is a lot, this is a lot to negotiate and plan. But I like loved it. I loved sort of not being great at something and endlessly pursuing it. I mean, it's also what exhausted me about being in that profession, but I was like intellectually and energetically stimulated. And so working part-time in the summer, which was really my second sort of stretch of like, okay, now we're going to take the skills you learn in the classroom and you're going to help other incoming Corps members develop the skills they need. It was like these series of women, mostly managers, who were like, hey, I think you can now maybe try this. And maybe you can now try this. And all of those experiences just helped me realize like what I love to do, what I'm great at, what I want to do more of. And all of those honestly directly shape what I do today. So it's kind of crazy to go back. This was 20 years ago that I started this, over 20 years ago that I started this experience. And it's 100% prevalent in what I do today.
Yeah, that's it's so I like the idea of not only did you have a group of people that were supporting you and pushing you out of your comfort zone, which is such a theme that I've heard from
Really?
just about everybody that I've spoken to. Yeah, they're like I forget who it was. I think it was Kate Morton, episode like 4 or 5, and she said I had to keep moving the bar
Yes.
because I would move outside my comfort zone, but then I would be comfortable, and
Yes.
then they would move me, but there's not only is it the experience, it's the person being willing
Yeah.
to be pushed out of your comfort zone, right? Like
Yeah.
there must have been something inside of you that was like, yeah, okay. For me, this was my driver. If they believe I can do it,
Yeah.
well, then I guess I got to figure out how to do it.
You say that because as you were talking, I'm like, I don't know if this is a good answer, but what helped me believe it is that someone that I deeply respected, and I was looking at them like, oh my God, she's such a badass, and like she
Yeah.
thinks that I should have a job with this level of responsibility. Then I'm gonna try to tell her, are you sure? Like triple check. And then if you still think I am, then I want to like figure out how to like live up to that expectation.
Yes.
And I was constantly getting developed along the way
Mm-hmm.
with great coaching and great training and great conversations that were also informal with other people who were also pushing themselves out of their comfort zone, right? So there
Mm-hmm.
was like this ritual of that movement that you're talking about, where it's like, okay, we're going to go. And it started with the Corps. It started with teaching. Oh my gosh, we're all doing this thing that is so important to us that we are so unsure that we know how to do well. But the conversations that come from that, which are really about like understanding what you're capable of and understanding
Mm-hmm.
securities, like that I could say to somebody else, I think that they accidentally let me have this job and they have it. And then someone else say, I feel that too, and then you're like, why do you feel that? And those relationships and conversations were as influential for me and my development and my sense of self as a professional development that I would go to and sit in, you know what I mean? Because it's like
Mm-hmm.
like-minded people pushing themselves in that zone of comfort or out of that zone of comfort and having those conversations. It was just like I can't say enough about how much it's changed my life and how much all of those people and relationships now again enable me to work for myself for a living. And it's
Yeah.
because of that network. It's literally only because of that network. It's not like I don't even know how I would have done this without that.
Mm-hmm. So after you were an AmeriCorps member, you were given an opportunity. You said, I think in the pre-interview, you were like, I was like a mini professor, and
Yeah.
you were creating curriculum for
Yeah.
this is when you officially moved out of service and into a job.
Working full time.
And for
Yeah.
all those folks out there, a service year is not a job. So just do not call it a job. You're
Really?
not
I
employed.
didn't know that. Well, I will
Yeah,
teach for America might be a little bit
it's
different.
a little bit
Yeah,
different.
yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit different. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like in AmeriCorps world, the word job in or employee is like, oh, where's
Oh,
the
really?
soap?
Okay,
Yeah, we would have to train people like,
okay.
don't call them staff.
Okay,
But yeah, it's a
okay,
little different with
okay.
Teach for America. But you now were getting paid and employed by Teach for America, right?
Yes, exactly. I was working full time, and it's funny because when you think about like finding your purpose, it's like so weird how young we have to do that. It's like you're
Mm.
18, you're like, I guess I'll be a teacher. And a huge part of me, it's like my whole childhood was like setting up fake school for like my little sister and the neighborhood kids. And my mom got me these like garage sale desks. So it's like I knew what I wanted to do.
Funny.
And then as I got these other experiences with TFA, like this mini professor job, if TFA alum are listening, they're like, oh, you were a curriculum specialist. And I was like, whoa, like facilitating to adults is like lit
Yeah.
me up. Like just there's something about that dynamic where I felt I got to talk about teaching, which at the time was like my number one like love is like, how can you become a great teacher? Well, I got to be funny, and you know, the humor and the storytelling that you can do with adults is just a little bit different than what I could do
Yeah.
with third graders. And so that really like tapped me into this idea of facilitating and working with facilitating learning for and working with and managing adults. And so I worked there for 15 years, kind of with an increasing level of responsibility. Again, like always like, are you sure? Like just waiting for them to realize that, yes, like who let this lady in charge? Like she like is clearly like, I just never felt like I fully fit the mold, which was like a me problem. Nobody else, you
Yes.
know, everybody has their own individual experience with TFA, and I honor that. But for me, which obviously comes with a lot of privilege, like I just felt like no one else was putting that on me. Everybody else was
Yep.
was gassing me up and like, oh my God, like you're so good at this, you're so good at that. And so that gave me a lot of experiences that kind of shifted my love of education and teaching into a love of like adult learning and management and team culture, and how can you make work a place that doesn't suck, and how can you make it really fun while you also do really exceptional work, and how can you help other adults who might be questioning why they have the seat to like see their insane levels of power and talent and skill as their manager or as their peer, and really grew to like become obsessed about that. So like what I originally was like so scared to work with adults coming from third graders, like there was a part of me that was like, I mean, I was like 24. It's not, I was like not an adult. You know what I mean? Like I was like literally
We
barely,
think we are.
I think my like frontal cortex was still closing in on itself. So I was like, I was really scared, but over a lot of failing, actually flamboyantly, and kind of like figuring out which parts of me could show up for that task, I grew to like really, really love it. And yeah.
Which leads you, I mean, we might as well go there, right? So I think, was it the beginning of the pandemic in 2020 that you just pivoted?
Yeah. I got laid off like a lot of people because the pandemic made our team sort of inherently need to change because we were an in-person training experience at that time. And so you were going to have an opportunity to either reapply for a new role as they were restructuring, or take a severance. And it was like, I just like, even today, I'm like, I can't believe I did. I don't know if I could ever have done it. Talk about synchronicity, right? Where it's just like, it was the weirdest, easiest yes I've ever had to make. Like, even I was like, this is pretty risky. You know, I had just been divorced a year. I was trying to figure out finances on my own. I have 2 kids, as you mentioned. So it was like not a very logical, yes. Like I always say, like, even my mom was like, honey, we like love you so much and believe in you, but like, is this the time to like do this task? I'm like, what's your plan? I'm like, I don't really have a plan, but I had this like dream. Like I was sort of like done thinking about teacher training, and all of the energy. I had done it for 20 years, and I was reaching the end of curiosity about it. And there was a lot of people that were very curious about it and could have done a job better than me. And I sort of felt that. Like I have a lot of energy. So when it's not there, I know it. Everybody else knows it. It's pretty obvious. And so at that time, I was like, I just want to like help managers. I think that I could do something with manager training and manager coaching, because it's such a key role to organizations that it absolutely gets like zero support. And so, yeah, so I took that leap, and that's obviously evolved over the last, of course, 3 years, but that was the impetus for leaving in the first place.
So what did you start doing? So I am a big believer in taking leaps of faith. I mean, like I took a job in a state that I had never set foot in.
Yeah.
Like when they hired me, I'm like, that I've driven through this state like 4 times.
Yeah.
And ultimately it didn't work out for long term, but it was a wonderful experience. And I met new people and I saw new things and I ate new food, and pimento cheese on hamburgers are amazing. I didn't know that. And I didn't know that South Carolina had its like special pimento cheese, but I will drive down to
That,
South
yeah.
Carolina
Okay.
just for that hamburger.
Yeah.
It was so
Yeah.
good, and so like taking a leap of faith and just being like, everything's always working out for me. Right? Like everything's always working out for me. So what,
It's funny.
like,
Okay, yeah. So
let's go there.
full transparency. The first thing I did was not work. So I was like, I know that I have the severance and I'm gonna take June and July and like just be with my kids. We've just been through like virtual school, all this crazy stuff at that time. And then once I started to come back online, a couple things happened. One, this is like full circle-ish. So a few things happened at the same time. First, a TFA alum, shout out to Sam and Kate, they reached out to me and they were like, hey, we have this job for you to do. Like, can you do it? And I was like, hey, I don't think I'm the best person for this job. I could probably give you 10 other people. They're like, yeah. It would be happy for us if you just did it. So it was like work came to me and I was kind of like, oh, I didn't even have to try for that. Like work came and at the time I was kind of like, okay, this will help me feel less guilty about not working because I could do it when my kids weren't here. And I was like, great, it's just enough work to keep me kind of intellectually engaged while I don't work. And then I started applying for jobs right away. And I couldn't even tell you right now, like, I'm like, why did I do that? Like there was a sense of safety that was like really calm.
Absolutely.
Like, girl,
yeah,
you want a regular
like that's
paycheck?
what you do. Yeah. Like
I did not want to fail flamboyantly. I wanted to have a paycheck and benefits that predictably came to me. And so I had this one interview with this organization, and all I can tell you, Nikki, is I was like, let me know when you want me to start. Because I thought I like crushed the interview. I was like 10 out of 10. Yes. I can't wait for them to call me right back and be like, could you start tomorrow? And I didn't get the job. And so it was like kind of confusing. Like there was definitely a part of me that was like, what? But then there was a part of me that was like, see, Chrissy, that feeling of like, you think you're going to go work for yourself on management and this company won't even hire you to do basic shit that you think you could do, that you think you just crushed. Right. So I was like, ugh. So then I called another TFA mentor who had been a mentor to me, like since I became on staff, Rachel, shout out if you're listening. And I was like, Rachel, like, I didn't get this job. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, if they don't hire me, like, why would I ever think I could do this on my own? And she was like, why the fuck are you applying for a job? I was like, because I don't know. And she's like, go and try to like, see if you can do this. And if you want to get a job with a company that will always be waiting for you, but like, you haven't really tried to do this thing that 2 months ago you called me and were like lit on fire to go do. And I was like, you're right. And she kind of helped me be like, they don't want, if they're not your people, if you're not their people, you're not their people. If you can't be exactly who you are, then that's not a fit. It's not something about them. It's not something about you. It's just like, oh, we're not a match. Right. So she kind of got me. And so by the end of that call, she's like, what's something you can do right now? She's like, no one knows you're working for yourself. I was like, I guess, is it not a business strategy to like keep that business private? I didn't go to business school, but like my current strategy is to pray that people find me and like maybe heard through the grapevine that I'm working for myself. And she was like, why don't you put on social media? She kind of gave me this strategy, like, hey, I want to do management coaching. I want to do training. Is there anybody willing? I have a set of questions I want to ask, kind of to like collect information about where I might go. I was like, okay, I'll post that by Friday. And she's like, what's your goal for how many people? And I was like, 5. She's like, great. Nikki, I posted this post on social media. I should go like find it. And 2 things happened. To your point of synchronicity. One is within an hour, I had 56 people signed up. By the time I had to close the form because I was just like, I was like feeling guilty that I was gonna have to say no to people who were offering their time. Right. So by the end of that day, I had like, let's say 100 people who had filled out the form who were willing to talk to me about, like, I was trying to do like a little bit of a I forget what it's called, like kind of like a niche research, like
Yeah,
what are the
market
key
research.
points of manager? What is you, yeah, market research. You're like, what would you hope you would have gotten? What are some of the things da 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 da? So that happened. So that right into there was like an energy boost of like, Chrissy, like
Yes.
you have a network, like you know the best people, like you've done some decent things in the last 20 years with your career, and you've been a decent human being, and everybody's reflecting that back to you, like they're saying like,
Yes.
yes, you know what I mean, like you're someone
Yes.
I want to support. So that was just like a, like a
Boost.
boost of affirmation that like what I
Yep.
wanted and felt like I could do, I could do.
I
And
was
then,
just gonna, I'm gonna say real fast.
yes, please do.
That
No,
is exactly what happened to me with this podcast. So
really?
yes, like I have been listening to podcasts before listening to podcasts was easy. I would say like it was I think I started listening in
Yes.
2016. I could
Yes.
only download like two, I would fill up my memory on my
Yes.
iPod,
Yes.
whatever. And so I've been listening forever, and I've always been like, I really want to do a podcast. I want to be on a podcast. I want to have a podcast. And then I started doing this momentum with Volunteer Maryland alumni because I was director for Volunteer Maryland.
Yes.
So then I started like an alumni group on LinkedIn, and then I started and then exactly what you said. It was last year, November 2022. I was sitting down in my apartment in South Carolina, and I'm like, I wonder if anybody in the AmeriCorps alumni group would be interested in being on a podcast. And I just dropped it in there. 150 people sent me
No.
back. Yes. I'm like, that's like 2 years if I
Yeah.
do once a week.
Right. Right. Well, and I cannot get enough stories like this. And because of what I do now, I'm constantly inundated with them, which just like reaffirms my faith, really. What it is it's like
Yep.
if you put energy towards the thing that you want, and it's hard because you don't start with the podcast, you don't start with working for yourself, but it's like that one little step, and then you get like a piece of information. You take one little step and you get a piece of information. And that's been what's happened to me over the last 3 years, and stories like this.
Yeah.
And a big part of my coaching practice, ironically, is now this thing, because I have such a passion for this in the same way that I had for management and for making work a place where we communicate well and have empathy and, so I can't get enough of stories like that.
So tell us a little bit about what this is. So if somebody was to do a coaching with Chrissy, like what are your strategies? Like, could you coach me through something right now? Right? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Oh, you're so excited. She's leaning
Yeah.
in. Folks, if you're not watching this right now, you're gonna want to go find the YouTube. I don't know how far we in, 30 minutes or something. She adjusted her seat and she's leaning in. So
Yeah. Yeah.
we're gonna get like the Chrissy coaching.
I'm trying. I mean, it's like so because the other thing that happened on that post was the failure lab thing, which has been so amazing, and
Yeah.
coaching people through their relationship to failure and stress and discomfort, and how that shows up at work, but also in their life. And so as I was coaching more and more managers, which were predominantly badass women, quite frankly, I was feeling this, it was less about management and more about this idea of like this feeling that they wanted something more or different than what they currently had, that they were like totally maxed out, totally exhausted, not giving enough to their family, not giving enough to their partner, not giving enough to themselves, feeling overwhelmed, all these things. And so part of what I love now, part of what I feel like so passionate about, is working with badass women, empowering them to lead their life on their terms. And
Love
like
that.
really saying the quiet thing out loud. Like I think that everybody has a little podcast idea, a little, and it might be like, I want to try pottery, and I waited 40 years and I'm just like not doing it. And all of these little things kind of change the shape of our life and make it more delightful or less delightful to live it. And I think like that experience in a coaching conversation around what is it that you really want? What does a fulfilled life look like to you right now? Is that the other?
Such a hard question to
It's so
answer,
hard. It's so hard.
because
It's
so a couple things that you said, number like even if people just want to start pottery, something that we also have to remember is just because I wanted to try pottery or sing or write or a podcast, I don't have to do it forever. And I don't have to be
that's
the best at it. And I don't have to make money at it, and I don't
yes.
have to be, whatever.
Yes,
And
exactly.
like society is just like, oh, you're going to do pottery? Are you
Yeah.
going to sell mugs?
Yeah.
Are you going to do it in 6 months?
Yes.
Like,
Yes. Yes. And that's exactly it. And like trying to shift from, because that question of like for now, I'm always trying to tack on to the
love
end,
that.
right? And you kind of just said it's like,
Love that.
you maybe want to do pottery for now. You want to do this podcast for now. I want to work for myself for
Yeah.
now. If I think about working for myself for the rest of my life, I get completely just shut down. It's so overwhelming. Like it's like, what if
That,
it's like that,
I'm I'm a bit, so if anybody were to come into my house right now, they would think I have dementia because I have sticky notes everywhere. Like I'm looking at one right now that says judgment, jealousy, comparison, confusion, doubt, lack. These are old habits and patterns of thoughts. Change your thoughts, right? And I love for now. Like I'm gonna have sticky notes all over my house now that says for now, right? Like
yeah. And then on the bigger questions too, it's like if I'm coaching a woman in her 40s, she has set her life up usually on some conditions and values that she had in her 20s and 30s.
or that were put on her.
Or that were put on her, right? And now she's like looking around and she's like, yes, I'm the CEO. Yes, I'm married. Yes, I have kids. Why am I miserable?
Mhm.
And like that's a scary question to look at, And so I think once you kind of get this one-on-one space with a coach who has no investment in what you end up doing and only an investment in how we can pull out more of your being, more of your essence, more of your goals, your values, your desires, like
Yep.
that it feels so freeing. It's scary and freeing. It's like both
Yeah.
and.
So another thing that I kind of lean into when that big question about like, what do you, I don't think you said, what do you want? I forget how exactly you phrased it. And I was like, that is just a really difficult question, is something I try to think about. How do I want to feel? How do I want to feel? Like when we had our call last week or whatever, I told you, like before we started recording everybody, I was like, I was on a high for like 5 days. Like Chrissy and I vibed so hard. It was amazing. And I was like, we're gonna rule the world, we're gonna change people's lives, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna start leveraging the podcast, and we're gonna get people, change people's minds. And then I just crashed and burned like after 4 days because my adrenaline was so high. But after I pulled myself out of that weird hole, and a lot of red wine, I think, makes me cry. So I gotta figure out a better way of
Yeah.
But I said, what did I feel like when after I talked to Chrissy? And I was like, I was so full. I was full of like my cup was running over, right? And I'm like, I want to feel like that. And I don't want to bring it to the extreme, but I want to feel like that. So what makes me feel like that? And then I kind of went into my meditation, and I was like, what else makes you feel that way? How can you surround yourself with that feeling and call that in? Spiritual gurus will be like, raising your vibration.
Yeah.
But it's true.
I know. The older I get, the more I'm like, I don't know if this is woo-woo, but I know it's true. Like I feel, and like what you're saying, I just made a post about this today, so maybe it's not too much on my mind, but the coaching program that I did, sort of the very first session, and I think this is like a thing a lot of people know, but I had never heard of it, and talking about sort of these two pieces of being a human. And on one side of the scale is doing, right? So it's all of the actions we take. It's all the questions we ask about, like, should I quit my job? Should I get a new job? Should I leave my marriage? Should I start dating? Should I take the pottery class? And we get really pulled as humans to that side because it's comfortable, because we can control it and we can see it. But on the other side of the teeter-totter is our being. And that's like our essence. That's our baby dreams. That's our emotions. That's our thought patterns. It's our beliefs. It's our values. And when these two things are out of alignment, we don't feel great. And we keep trying to we ask our friends, what do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? What do you think I should do? When really the question should be around some much more difficult questions around, what do I want to feel more of? What do I want to feel less of? What matters to me right now? And you can't change your doing without changing your being and looking a little more closely. You can quit your job, but you're going to feel the same at the next job.
Take yourself with you.
Exactly. Take yourself with you. Like, I love that. Yes, exactly.
So two things. This is so funny. I just was listening to a podcast today. And they brought up the doobie doo be doo be doo be doo do be do be.
Yes.
That's the human experience. Do
Yes.
be do be. It was
Yes.
it was an interview with Michael Beckwith, and he's the founder of Agape, and he was talking about like just exactly what we're talking about here, but in the Michael Beckwith way of doing it. And another one, when I say you take yourself with you, this is funny. Oh, I don't know, over the past like 3 years, 4 years, whatever, I've had the worst supervisors. And I'm like,
Right.
it's what the common denominator is, Nikki.
I know. I know.
Me.
Yeah, I keep running into the same assholes. It's just
Oh
a
my
real
God.
coincidence. Yes. Yeah, it's true. And like, I work with a lot of hyper achievers, women specifically. I work with a couple of great dudes, but mostly I work with women, and they want to get out of what they're in, but then they get a new job and it's like smash cut to like the exact same. And so until you really ask yourself, like,
Yes.
what parts of me is this feeding? What do I feel like when I don't have this? Why is that? Then you can't find a new way to do the
No.
thing that will help you. Yeah.
It's the idea of the two wolves, right? Like the one that you feed is the one that's going to
Yeah.
survive. Are
Yeah.
you going to feed the one? And also, the idea of taking responsibility for absolutely everything that you create in your life is not a good feeling.
Right.
It's just not a good feeling. I created a supervisor that fired me, right? Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
It wasn't
Yeah.
anything that they did. It
Yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah.
I can create stories and make myself feel better, but
Yeah.
until we absolutely take responsibility for, and then you can change.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think is so
Yeah.
powerful. And having a coach, like you said, that doesn't have, and I like that you said that, because I went through coaching and I found it a little bit difficult for me because I did get attached to the outcome. I'm like,
Yeah.
you said you were going to do it. You could totally do it. Like, do it, do it, do it, do it. And when they didn't do it, I was like, what is,
Yeah.
you come back to me every week and you say the same thing, And I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, but I like how you said that, having the coach not attached to the outcome can help you get through these things and see these things about you if you're not willing to work on them yourself.
Yeah.
I like to work on them by myself because quite frankly, I'm self-conscious. I don't want people to know what an asshole I am.
No, I mean, and I get that a lot too. It's almost like people like they feel bad about coming to a call if they haven't done the thing that they said they were going to do. And as if they're doing it for me, and I get that, most of us are more inclined to meet other people's expectations. It's just like the habit style for, like I might not go to the gym on my own, but if I told Nikki I'm going to be there, I'm going to go. And so if accountability works for you in that way, then a coach can be a great like way to inch yourself, but it does require a ton of vulnerability to go to what is often a total stranger and let them into these parts of you that you're often even protecting from yourself.
Yes.
And so even when you don't take the step, then that you said you wanted to take, then we can come back to being curious about why. Maybe we didn't get the right step. Maybe you thought you really wanted to do that, but you never did. Maybe you're afraid of failing at the thing. There's another version of the story that I shared at the beginning where I called Rachel and she tells me to post and I say, okay. And then I don't post because like my fingers literally freeze right before that, because it's scary to do something that could confirm your worst fears about yourself.
Buckets, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So I just had a friend the other day and she works for herself and she's just like, I want to post about X, Y, and Z. I want to post about X, Y, and Z. I want to put it in the Facebook group of TFA alums, but I get so in my head once I da, 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 da. And then she called me and she's like, I said, okay, let's close your eyes. Because it's like, it is about grounding in the present moment, and the truth lives here in that nanosecond. Everything else is a fear about what happened from the past, or a fear about what might happen in the future. And your thought patterns come in to protect you. Like I always say, like, it's really hard being human. Like it's really hard overdriving the ways in which our brain like gets in our own way. But I've learned so much about myself from helping other people through these exact types, because I face them myself. There's, for every example I'm giving right now here where I got forward momentum, I have twice as many about feeling like I'm still a fraud and don't know what I'm doing. And you know what I mean?
No,
It's just like
yes,
part of the human condition. So
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I feel like I could talk to you for about all of this stuff
same.
forever and ever. But I want to touch base on give Failure Lab a shout out
Yes.
because that's how we um
Yes.
connected. She's so fun.
Oh,
It was so fun. And I learned it's a lot of the same stuff that you hear, but
yeah.
it's coming at it in a different way, coming at
Yeah.
it through failure. And it's funny because I was thinking about this the other day. I was a gymnast. I started gymnastics when I was like 2 years old, and I blame everything on gymnastics, and I'm grateful for
Yeah.
everything with
Yeah.
gymnastics because,
Yeah.
I learned how to just literally take a leap of faith, right? Like you have to throw yourself off of stuff and hope
Yeah.
that you can land on the beam, right? Or
Yeah.
learn how to do it. But there was always somebody two steps ahead of me or two classes ahead of me that was doing not just a double back, they were doing a triple back on the floor.
Yeah.
And so like I had to figure out how to get myself jumping higher and being stronger to be able to do that. And so I noticed though that like I literally said this to myself yesterday, that I was like, there's nobody there's not classes in life, right? Like I've been like driven so hard to like try to go forward and higher and reach the next thing. I think because I was just at a young age influenced by gymnastics, of course. And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's no class in life, like there's no steps. And I feel like the Failure Lab experience was something that kind of grounded me, and I'm like, and also made it an let's talk about real fast the whole thing about like when you're in that, you've just had something, adrenaline hit, you had a conversation, and then you don't have that time to like process and relax, like the
Mhm.
tiger chasing you. And
Mhm. Mhm.
I don't know, that was just something that I took away
Yeah.
from the Failure Lab, where I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, go for a walk and
Yeah.
exhale,
Yeah. Yeah.
cry.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Failure Lab has been like the best gift that ever like landed in my lap. And that was the other thing that came of that post about managers is Anna Baton, who
Yes.
runs Failure Lab, who was just a parent at my kid's school, and we had passed each other kind of, very lightly. She commented on that post. She was the first one, and she was like, "I want to talk to you. Like, I think I have a perfect project for you," and it really is. So, Failure Labs, the
And the
foundation of. Go ahead.
the founder and creator is an AmeriCorps alumni, right? Isn't he?
Is he? I don't know if that's true. I
Yeah.
should know that. Yeah,
I'm gonna look
Jordan
while
and
you're.
Jonathan. Yeah, look it up. Its goal is to really better understand yourself, better understand others, and better understand us and the ways we interact and
Mhm.
we communicate. And so the foundation of everything we do is a bunch of experiences that hopefully illuminate and spotlight ways in which that might be able to happen through this lens of failure and distress, which is a perfect lens to sort of feeling like, when am I most inclined to react, right? Because when we
Mhm.
experience failure, and I don't mean like massive failure like divorce, I mean a missed deadline, I mean saying the wrong thing, I mean a typo on a presentation, all of those kick up without any conscious thought or like choice, a reaction in our body. And so a lot of what we do in the background at Failure Lab is around our stress and stress response cycle, and understanding that when we are kicked up into that when a stressor hits and the stress response cycle is activated, we literally lose access to logic and emotional intelligence. So
That's so
the,
smart. We have to remember that.
yeah, and if you're a parent, you know that, right? You're like,
Yeah.
and we can't even do this at home, let alone with people we work with and things like that. So understanding our own reactivity and the ways that impacts our tendencies and the ways we show up and how to take care of ourselves and feel our bodies. Like, we try to use the 4% of our brain to basically yell at and manage the 96% of our body. And
Mm,
rather than from sort of a ground up and understanding like there is a beginning, middle, and end to a stress response cycle, and taking that breath and that walk and using
mhm.
your senses to like let yourself go through that moment before you respond, pause the conversation, all of those things is a big part of what we do. And it's so much fun to facilitate, Nikki. Like it's like part storytelling for me and comedy, because I get to put myself as the butt of all the jokes, of
Yeah.
just like, why does feeding my kids buttered noodles at dinner make me feel profound
Feel,
failure, but
yes,
I could
yep.
like not get a job and like move along. Like, I don't know. I just know that that's true for me. And so we do a
Hmm.
lot of experiences like that. And when you do activities like that in a group of people, you really realize and see, wow, not everybody thinks like me.
Yes.
Not everybody makes sense of this same experience as me. And so it's just like a one-way like bullet to empathy and
Mm,
understanding and curiosity of like, why are you like a 10 on buttered noodles? It's like,
yeah,
well, because my identity as a mother is wrapped up in X, Y, and Z, or, in the work context, why are you a 10 if you don't meet a goal? Well,
yeah.
because my identity, and so it just opens up all these like really cool conversations. It's so fun. It's like the best, it's
Hmm.
like the second best surprise to ever happen to me outside of TFA, where I'm just like, wow, I get to do this at work and it's so fun.
I love that. And so you guys do failure lab, like all different types of trainings within that scope
Hmm.
for organizations, but you also have like groups where people could
Yes.
just join. I mean,
Yes.
I've seen that and put it, I think it's been dropped in LinkedIn a couple times and
Yeah.
I follow Failure Lab now. So it's something that actually, if a viewer or a listener was interested in,
Yes.
would they just go to
Yeah.
failurelab.com or something?
Yep, exactly. Go to failurelab.com. We have an upcoming SHE cohort, which is the one you did, which is for women
Hmm.
in leadership. We've been doing a couple like one-off. We have one this week, actually. This podcast probably won't be out, but we've been doing these like on perfectionism. There's like a
Hmm.
real overlap between perfectionism and failure and things like that. Or we do it for teams and go into organizations who are kind of looking to facilitate some of these conversations. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you have a team, want to facilitate some of these
Yeah.
conversations,
Hit us
I
up.
highly recommend this. I think it just opens the door, like definitely for me, the remembering that people aren't coming from where I'm coming from is so
Yes.
important. It's so important because I live in my own bubble, I
Yeah.
mean, with astrology and flowers and everything's great,
Yeah, I love it.
and
Yeah.
and I can judo flip negative thoughts to have a positive experience. Like, that's my
Yep.
superpower. I can always find the silver lining for most of the time, but
Hmm.
not everybody can, and not everybody wants to. And
Yeah.
so for me to remember that, like, I've got to hold space for people to process and do whatever that
Hmm.
they need to do. And, while I do tons of professional development and book reading, this and that, going through a training is super important. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's really
so
fun. I can't say enough about it. Like, we have amazing facilitators and the questions that we explore and the activities we do are just so fun.
I love it. All right, so we're coming to an end. We could just
Okay.
talk forever and ever,
Yes.
but closing thoughts. Last, I don't know, like, so you're coaching. So are you
Yes.
open for, like,
I
if somebody
am.
was like digging that vibe and could use some help,
Yeah.
how do we find you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I also have a Substack, just Chrissy Heyne Substack. So I write a lot about sort of these types of topics, and maybe you're not quite ready for a coach, but you're curious about some of the little nuggets that have helped me and other clients I've coached along the way. But if you hit me up at LinkedIn, I would love to connect. And yeah, just nothing but gratitude. Like I do, life is just kind of like this series of dominoes that you knock over and that get knocked over for you.
Yeah,
And so I'm really, really grateful that our dominoes kind of cross paths in this way, that you
totally.
asked me to be on this podcast. And my AmeriCorps and Teach for America experience are like a huge, huge part of who I am. It's in my life everywhere to this day.
Mhm.
So if you're out there and maybe you're earlier in your AmeriCorps process and you're listening to this, like you
Yes.
have a lot of dominoes between where you're at and being 43. So I think
Yes.
your experience wherever you're at along it will have a profound impact on your life if you let it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if somebody is listening to this and they're in their AmeriCorps year and they're wondering if it's worth, yes, stick it out, get through it, do whatever, and then connect with alumni. Because one other thing that I'm hearing from alumni that I'm talking to is people are really alumni are really interested in mentoring AmeriCorps members who are going through a service year
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
So, of course, when people challenge me with something like, "Hey, would that work?" I'm like, "I don't know, I'll figure it out."
Yeah.
So anybody that's listening to this, you're just part of a group of alumni. And it's weird as humans, and you probably could tell us why with the brain, but like, because somebody is an AmeriCorps alumni and they're in your in group because you had an AmeriCorps experience, you're almost like I can trust them a little bit more, or you
Yeah.
feel a little bit more connected to them.
Yeah.
And so something else that Chrissy and I were talking about, well, I freaked out after I talked to her last week and I was like, we're going to have a mastermind group. And essentially a mastermind group would be like a closed group of people who like some of the ideas that we just talked about, some of the mindset shifts, some of the identifying things within yourself and moving through. I don't know if you guys are interested in something like that, like reach out to Chrissy, reach out to me,
Yeah.
and maybe we'll put something together. This is
Yeah.
called the leap of faith.
Yeah, I love it. Put it out there. Put it out there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
I think
great.
anything to get people more energized about living a life that feels really good to them. I have a ton of energy for that. So I'm down for something fun like that for
Same.
sure.
Love it. And
Yeah.
just for y'all, Jupiter is moving into Taurus tomorrow, May 16th. The podcast is not coming out tomorrow, so you're going to hear this backwards, but it's going to give you a lot of grounding in some of your goals and dreams that you want to
Oh,
do for the next year. So Jupiter and Taurus, just like if something pops into your brain, that thought is thinking you're not thinking the thought. So take the action.
I
What?
didn't know that. Yeah, you just dropped some knowledge on me.
I
Fun.
did.
I need that energy.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was absolutely wonderful. And I forgot to mention at the top that this is supported by the production of Dan Medevere, Time and Money Productions. Thank you. Thank you. He is the one that has gotten this podcast on every platform. And he answers my questions when I'm crying in the middle of the night and I don't know how to. So we'll have another interview dropped on a Friday. So thank you all if you've made it this far. There's hopefully more to come with Christy and I. So take care.